I understand that the players, which normally have a hand and a say in how the business develops, were sort of blindsided by this.
They were absolutely blindsided. Many of them taken aback, many of them finding out about this news on twitter.com, which is not where you like to find out business that is intimate and personal to you. I talked with a number of players, and they attended a meeting with PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan. And frankly, they kind of raked him across the coals a little bit. A number of players called him a hypocrite. Some players stood up and called for his job. There was an extended group of players that stayed afterward, after the meeting with Jay Monahan, kind of held their own little meeting to say, how do we want to move forward with this? How do the players want to run this organization that is allegedly a player-run tour? I don't know what came of that extra meeting. All I know is that there will be more discussions today between Monahan and the players. He thinks it's a win. It's his job to tell them why it's going to be a win.
You know, it's interesting for a CNBC audience, I think, that this is really going to be a commercial venture. This is going to be a business opportunity, and in ways that we may not have seen before, opportunities for the sponsors and investors to have a copacetic relationship. Can you give me a sense of what you're learning right off the top about what the sponsors think about this, and how this might affect, for instance, contracts with these players who they had taken a stand, they'd chosen to be loyal. Those who stayed with the PGA may be looking at what they gave up by not going to live and really regretting that now.
Well, exactly 12 months ago, Live Golf launched. It launched in the UK, near London, and that week was a week of unease. And the 12 months that followed, basically that continued. Companies and brands that are used to sponsoring golfers, used to putting a patch on their shoulder or on their chest or on the brim of their hat, like those brands weren't quite sure what to do with players that had committed to Live Golf, players that had committed to this Saudi investment. And sometimes that included not including them in promotional materials, not including them in the banners of their websites. You know, I'm talking club companies. There are athletic apparel companies such as Adidas that cut ties with Dustin Johnson, one of the best players in the world who took over $100 million of Saudi investment. They cut ties with Sergio Garcia, a player who had repped that brand for over 20 years. Those are kind of final decisions, I believe. That said, there are other brands that kind of just stayed away from making rash decisions. They stayed quiet. And now that next year, Live golfers will perceivably be on the PGA Tour once again, I think a lot of those discussions will start up again. And I think a lot of these original contracts might just continue. And we won't really talk about that weird year that was 2022 into 2023.
You got to wonder whether, you know, once you have 9/11 families and they're so angry, they're just furious about this coming out and taking a stand against it, how sponsors are going to feel about that. We wait and we watch. Sean, it's good of you to join us this morning and talk a little bit about it. I want to bring in my colleague, Robert Frank, just right away. Robert, you cover a lot of sporting events where there are sponsorships, and I'm just curious what your reaction is to this. What do you anticipate you're going to see?
Yeah, it's so early, Contessa. I mean, there's just so much money involved. Golf, as you know, has a very affluent clientele, very well-educated, well-read clientele, and I think it's going to be really interesting for them to navigate the politics of this. But at the end of the day, Contessa, as you know, sports is an entertainment business with emphasis on business. And, you know, commercially, this looks like it's going to be a growing league and a growing business. You know,
that it's so interesting because, Sean, when we're talking about what the Saudi-backed Live Golf gets out of it, what do the Saudis get out of it? There have been accusations that their efforts to get into the Premier League and to sort of own soccer/football everywhere else in the world, that it really is an attempt to clean up their image, or what's known as sport washing. What do you make of that?
Oh, that is the tune that we have certainly been listening to and hearing people sing over the last 12 months in the golf world. It's attacked other worlds too. It has gone through the boxing world, the F1 world. This is nothing new to pro sports, but it's certainly something that golf has been dealing with. And that is an answer for Jay Monahan. I was talking to a player yesterday and I said, hey, Jay Monahan's going to be doing press here in the next 15 minutes. Are there any unanswered questions that you would have for him? And this is a player who is living in Arizona. And he said, yeah, what about the 9/11 families that I was told to think about for the last 12 months or so, and how they were supposed to impact my money and my thoughts about them? What do I think about that now? And that's just not a question that has been answered by Jay Monahan yet. And the PGA Tour brass are going to be asked that eventually.
Not that specifically, but but Monahan did acknowledge that he had done an about face here. I mean, his quote, before was like, have you ever had to apologize for being a member of the PGA Tour? And he acknowledged that he's had to do this big flip.